Devin Crozet here. I decided I'm going to do some off-season drift off-season video blogs as I'm working on my car, fixing some stuff or whatever in the off-season. Go like and follow my page, Dr. Garage. That's where you can follow for updates on my 8.6 and what I'm up to with it. So, anyway, so I decided to do some blogs as I'm in the off-season, keep myself a little more entertained than just like fixing stuff. So the topic I want to start with today, the first topic is getting started into drifting. So I want everybody to keep in mind that I'm still an amateur drifter, and by amateur I mean like I don't have much seat time. I love drifting. It's my passion. I love building drift cars. I love drifting. I love doing ride-alongs. I like going for ride-alongs. All these things, right? So I'm going to share with you an experience I had at the last drift event here this year. It's probably the coolest. It's probably been like the coolest experience I've had so far with drifting. So, you know, doing ride-alongs, I get asked the question like, "Oh man, like how long have you been drifting?" Or like, "How long have you had this 8.6?" And you know, so I've been drifting. It's kind of hard to say. I want to say I've been involved in drifting for about 6 years, which is just as long as I've had this 8.6, right? And I say that I've been involved with drifting, not I've been drifting for 6 years, because I bought this car as pretty much a shell. And so I've only been able to get like one drift event in a year, if that, since I bought it. And so really, it's only been like I've been drifting this year, because this year I was able to get 5 drift events in, and I could have been getting more if I would have had more time or money or scheduled better or whatever. So anyway, one of the ride-alongs I was able to do this year was with a kid. I met him and his dad in the pits, and by kid I mean he's not like a little child, but he doesn't have a driver's license yet, and he wants to get into drifting. And so you know, I started talking to him and his dad. And I wish I remember their names, so if you're watching, I'm sorry I don't remember your names. You guys are really cool, and I really enjoyed talking to you about drifting. So anyway, the thing that we started talking about, or that the subject got onto, was like how to get started into drifting, right? And the biggest advice I have for anybody if you want to get into drifting is don't start with a shell. And I can speak from experience. So I bought this car. It's a rust bucket, middle of nowhere, in Utah, sitting on the side of the road, grass growing through it. It was essentially a shell. I bought it non-running. I spent the first year, I think it was the first year, getting it running on the engine that was in it. This is an SR5, so it had a single overhead cam carbureted engine called a 4AC. Super slow, like no power, like maybe 60 horsepower, going downhill with the wind or something, right? And so I got running and driving on that. I'm like, sweet, bought this Corolla for super cheap. I'm going to get into drifting. And that first year, I blew up the 4AC that I just got running, right? So then, oh man, I don't have a drift car anymore. So I stop and I save money for another year while I do a GTS swap. So a 4AG, so dual overhead cam fuel injected engine, like the better older brother of the 4AC. Still only like 100 horsepower on a good day. But still, that's enough to get drifting. And then that blew up because it was a junkyard engine that I like slapped a head gasket on and resealed it. And so then I spent another year saving my money to be able to rebuild it. And of course, being a college kid, I didn't do everything that I should have probably, so that blew up. And so I spent several years, and here I am on my 6th year of having this car, and 6th year of being involved with drifting, and I finally have a reliable car. You know, I've probably spent way too much time and money in this car, and I think like, man, if I could do this all over again, like I still would probably build an 8.6 because I love 8.6s. But I probably would have like bought this car and had it sitting while I slowly built it, and had like an S13 or an S14 or an E36 BMW or something that I drove and drifted, because you can buy those for still pretty affordable. I know 240s are going up a little bit in price, but like you can usually buy an E36 for like $2,000, and it's pretty reliable. And then all you got to do from there is put in like coilovers and an angle kit and a weld the diff, and you're out there having a good time. Or if you got a limited slip because you got lucky with an E36 or 240 or something, like sweet. Like, go out there and have a good time, because now you're into the car, you know, maybe $3,500 or $4,000 with everything, with coilovers and some angle mods and a welded diff, and then you're out there having a good time with your buddies. And I saw that like time and time again this year. Like these guys that like they come out, they're like, wow, drifting is cool. So then they go buy a BMW or a 240 for pretty cheap on Craigslist and do a little bit of mods to it, and then they're out there having a good time with all their friends. And that's why you don't buy a shell, because here I am 6 years later, I'm finally having a good time with it, and it's taking me way too long. You know, and I see it a lot too. These people buy a shell, right? I've never been drifting before. I'm going to build a drift car, so I'm looking for an S13, S14, BMW, RX-7, whatever, and I'm going to put an LS in it, or a 5-liter Ford, or a JZ or something, or right? And so then they're like, buy a car that's a shell, non-running and driving. They spend a bunch of time and money getting it, you know, with like putting this sweet engine into it and doing all these crazy mods, and then they never get it running and driving, and so they sell it for way less than they're into it, because now drifting sucks to them because they never actually got out there. So don't do that. Start with a car that runs and drives. Start kind of simple, because then, I mean, I don't want to say that start simple because you've never driven a car before, driven a drift car before, but I say start simple because that's enough to get you going. You don't have to have a high horsepower, crazy steering in your car to have a good time. You know, these guys out there in pretty much stock BMWs and 240s are having a great time, and they're out driving me in a car that has, like, I have pretty much everything possible done to this Corolla that you can. You know, every bolt-on steering and suspension part, modded knuckles, a custom, you know, rear end. I built it from a Volvo, and a Beams engine, and, you know, so I got more horsepower, and I've got all this stuff, and I've got a hydro, and the car is way overbuilt, and, you know, way overbuilt for me. I think, you know, I can progress with this car without having to change anything, but I see these guys out there that are out driving me because they're getting way more seat time because they started simple. So do that. If you want to get started in drifting, buy something that's reliable and modify it, and don't have to worry about fixing it or trying to swap it. Alright, so that's all I got for today. I'll probably do another one tomorrow. I don't know, maybe we'll talk about unconventional drift builds, or I don't know, maybe we'll talk about my Corolla a little bit. Just wait and see.